There's a moment, and maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about, when you are standing at the edge of something. A decision, a dream, a conversation you've been putting off for months. And instead of stepping forward, you freeze. Not because you don't know what to do, not because the path isn't clear, but because some quiet, stubborn voice in the back of your mind whispers, "Who are you to think you can actually pull this off?" Maybe that voice sounds like a teacher who once told you that you weren't cut out for it. Maybe it sounds like a parent's well-meaning but crushing doubt. Maybe, and this is the hardest one, it sounds exactly like your own voice. The one you hear in the shower at 6 in the morning. The one that runs through your mind on the commute home when the day didn't go how you'd hoped. I want to ask you something directly. How many dreams have you quietly abandoned, not because they were impossible, but because you stopped believing they were possible for you? How many times have you watched someone else achieve exactly what you wanted, someone with less experience, less talent, fewer advantages, and felt that specific, terrible brand of confusion that says, "How did they do it? Why not me?" I've sat with that question for a long time. And the more I read, the more I studied, the more I spoke with people who had genuinely turned their lives around. Not the Instagram version, not the highlight reel, but people who had actually climbed out of failure and fear and self-doubt into something real. The answer kept pointing to the same place. Not a new skill, not a better strategy, not even harder work. It pointed inward. It pointed to belief. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Belief? That sounds nice, but my rent is due. My relationship is struggling. My boss doesn't respect me. My business is bleeding money. You want me to believe my way out of all that? And I hear you, truly, because I've been there. And I'm not here to sell you a fantasy. I'm here to tell you what Dr. Joseph Murphy discovered and what he spent decades teaching, which is that belief is not a passive wish. It is not a nice thought you hold while waiting for something to change. Belief, the kind he's talking about, is a force. It is a directive sent from your conscious mind straight into the deepest engine of your being, your subconscious. And when that directive is clear, when it is repeated, when it is charged with genuine feeling, the subconscious responds. It has no choice. That is how it was built. Dr. Joseph Murphy was born in 1898 in Ireland, became a pharmacist, a minister, and eventually one of the most widely read self-development authors of the 20th century. His most famous book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, sold millions of copies and changed lives on every continent. But before that book, before all the fame, he wrote something smaller and in some ways even more essential. Believe in yourself. A slim, urgent, almost breathlessly hopeful book about what becomes possible when you stop fighting against yourself and start working with the most powerful force you already possess. In this video, we're going to go deep inside this book together. We're going to walk through its chapters one by one, not just summarizing ideas, but actually experiencing them, because Murphy's genius was never an abstract theory, it was in story, in case histories, in the specific, vivid, sometimes astonishing accounts of people who used the principles in this book to transform their health, their careers, their relationships, and their sense of who they are. By the end, you're going to have more than information. You're going to have a framework and a feeling that you can carry with you into the rest of your day, your week, your year. A framework that says the power was always here. It was always you, and it is not too late to use it. Let's begin. We're starting with Chapter 1, The Miracle of Imagination. What you picture, you become. Close your eyes for just a moment. Actually, don't. You're watching or listening. But imagine this. It's the night before the most important presentation of your career. The room will be full. The stakes are real. And in the hours before you fall asleep, you have a choice. You can run through every scenario where it goes wrong. The stammering, the blank slide, the audience checking their phones. You can rehearse the disaster in perfect cinematic detail. Or, and this is what Murphy is talking about, you can do something else entirely. Dr. Murphy opens Believe in Yourself with a story that seems old, almost ancient. The story of Joseph from the book of Genesis. And if you're not religious, stick with me, because Murphy isn't preaching theology here. He is doing something far more interesting. He is decoding a piece of ancient wisdom about the mechanics of the human mind. In Murphy's reading, Joseph represents imagination, not daydreaming, not wishful thinking, disciplined, directed, intentional imagination. And the detail Murphy focuses on, the coat of many colors, is the image of imagination's greatest power, its capacity to clothe any idea in vivid, sensory, emotional reality. Here is the core concept Murphy lays out in this first chapter, and I want you to really hear this. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between something vividly imagined and something physically happening. When you rehearse an outcome in your mind with enough feeling, enough clarity, enough emotional charge, your subconscious treats that image as real. It begins to align your behaviors, your perceptions, your energy toward manifesting what you've planted there. This is not mysticism. This is not magic. It's actually quite close to what modern psychology would later call mental rehearsal, the same technique used by Olympic athletes, top surgeons, and elite performers across every field. Let me tell you about a man named Conrad Hilton, the hotel magnate. Before he ever owned a single hotel, before he had the capital, before he had the connections, Conrad Hilton would walk into grand hotels he couldn't afford to stay in, sit in the lobby, and in his mind, with full sensory detail, he would imagine himself as the owner. He would feel the weight of the keys in his pocket. He would picture the staff coming to him with questions. He would see his name above the door. He did this for years, not as a substitute for action, but as fuel for it. His imagination set a direction, and his subconscious went to work building the road. Murphy's point is elegant and uncomfortable at the same time. Most of us use our imagination constantly, but backwards. We imagine the worst. We rehearse embarrassment, rejection, failure. And then we wonder why we keep encountering embarrassment, rejection, and failure. The tool is always running. The only question is, what direction is it pointed? And here is the thing Murphy says that I keep coming back to. He quotes the industrialist who told him, "It is just as easy to imagine yourself successful as it is to imagine failure, and far more interesting." So, what does disciplined imagination actually look like in practice? Murphy gives a clear technique. He calls it picturing the end. You don't imagine the process. You don't imagine the steps. You go directly to the outcome. You see it as already accomplished. You hold that image with feeling, not straining for it, but settling into it, like a memory of something that already happened. A writer Murphy worked with had been blocked for months. Staring at a blank page, every morning, paralysis. Murphy suggested something radical in its simplicity. Before you sit down to write, spend 10 minutes lying quietly and seeing in your imagination the finished manuscript on your desk, feeling the weight of it, seeing your name on the cover, hearing someone tell you how much it meant to them. That writer finished a novel within 6 months. Here is what I want you to take from this chapter. Your imagination is not an escape from reality. It is the factory where reality is built. What you consistently picture in your mind, charged with feeling, held with belief, is what your subconscious mind will work unceasingly and without your awareness to produce. The question is not whether you are using this tool. You are always using this tool. The question is whether you are using it consciously, deliberately, in service of the life you actually want. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about the single biggest obstacle that stands between where you are and where you want to be. And it's not money, it's not time, it's not opportunity, it's the way you think about yourself. And Dr. Murphy has a lot to say about that. Let's move into Chapter 2, Your Mental Attitude, the Hidden Thermostat of Your Life. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to walk through life like the whole world is tilted in their favor? Things work out for them, opportunities appear, people want to help. And then there are others, sometimes equally talented, equally educated, equally hardworking, for whom everything seems like a struggle, like they're pushing a boulder uphill every single day. What is the difference? Murphy's answer is stark and clear. It's not luck, it's not connections, it is mental attitude. He tells the story of a salesgirl in a bookshop. Murphy had published a small pamphlet on a spiritual topic and left copies for sale in the store. Sales were almost non-existent until Murphy discovered the reason. The girl selling the pamphlets was violently opposed to the ideas inside them. Her attitude, unspoken, invisible, but radiating, was pushing customers away. When Murphy explained the ideas to her, she understood them and became genuinely enthusiastic. The pamphlets sold out before his lecture series ended. Nothing changed but her attitude. Same pamphlets, same store, same customers. But the energy she brought, the subtle communication of her belief, changed the entire outcome. Murphy defines mental attitude as your habitual emotional reaction to the people, circumstances, and events of your life. It is the lens through which you see everything. And here is the thing that makes this so important. Your attitude is not caused by the world. The world is largely caused by your attitude. This is a hard thing to sit with, because it means that the difficulty you are experiencing in your career, in your relationships, in your finances, is at least partially a reflection of the mental attitude you've been carrying. He describes a 16-year-old boy who came to him failing in school. Memory problems, terrible grades. The parents were worried. Murphy didn't prescribe a tutor. He helped the boy change his mental attitude. The boy began to pray, not in the religious sense, but in Murphy's sense. He began to hold in his mind a clear picture of himself succeeding, of his memory working perfectly, of teachers congratulating him, of coming home with excellent grades. Within months, the boy's performance transformed, not because his intelligence changed, because his attitude toward himself changed. He stopped rehearsing failure and started rehearsing success. And his subconscious mind, faithful as always, began delivering the results that matched his new internal picture. Murphy makes a claim here that I want you to really feel. He says, nothing external can disturb you without your mental consent. Read that again. Nothing external can disturb you without your mental consent. You are the only thinker in your world. The headlines, the opinions of others, the economy, the weather, none of it has the power to dictate your inner state unless you permit it. This is not an invitation to be delusional. It is not about pretending bad things don't happen. It is about recognizing that you have far more sovereignty over your inner life than you've been exercising. That the emotional reaction you've been treating as automatic is actually a choice. One you've been making unconsciously, but a choice nonetheless. So how do you change a mental attitude? Murphy's answer is through what he calls scientific prayer, which is really just directed, disciplined thought. You identify the attitude you want to have toward your work, toward yourself, toward others, and you begin to think from that attitude rather than about it. You start small. You catch yourself in the old attitude and gently, firmly redirect. Not suppression, redirection. Think about the attitude you bring to your Monday morning, or to a difficult conversation, or to looking in the mirror. That attitude is not fixed. It is a habit. And like any habit, it can be changed with patience, with practice, and with the tools Murphy gives us. The chapter that follows takes this even deeper, because Murphy argues that imagination and attitude alone aren't quite enough. There is a third ingredient, one that the great achievers throughout history have understood, and it might be the most important thing in this entire book. We're heading now into Chapter 3, the power of faith, the activating force that makes it real. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. The most successful people I have ever read about, across business, science, art, athletics, share one quality that goes beyond talent, beyond strategy, beyond sheer effort. They all possessed an almost unreasonable confidence that what they were pursuing was already done. Not hoped for, not desired, already done. This is what Murphy means by faith. Not religious faith specifically, though he was a minister and that language is present in his work. What he means is a quality of inner conviction, a state of mind where doubt is not the dominant voice, where the picture you hold in your imagination is held there not with anxiety and crossing of fingers, but with something closer to certainty. He quotes a phrase that stopped me cold the first time I read it. All things are possible to him that believeth. And what Murphy says next is crucial. The key word is believeth, not wisheth, not hopeth, believeth. There is a specific quality of conviction being described here, one that goes beyond the surface level of your conscious thoughts and drops all the way down into your subconscious. Murphy tells the story of a young woman who had been unemployed for 8 months. She came to him desperate, nearly at the end of her rope. She had sent out hundreds of resumes, had gone on dozens of interviews. Nothing. Murphy didn't give her a new resume strategy. He gave her something she hadn't tried. He asked her to spend 20 minutes each morning in a state of quiet, deliberate faith, to sit still, to calm her mind, and to affirm, not anxiously, but calmly, with absolute inner certainty, I am gainfully employed. I am doing work I love. I am contributing and being compensated well. Not pleading, not hoping, stating, as though it were already true. Within 3 weeks, she had 2 job offers. Now, I know what the skeptic in the room is thinking. That's correlation, not causation. She was applying to places and eventually the odds caught up. And maybe. But Murphy's point is not that the affirmation magically writes your paycheck. The point is what the affirmation does to you. When you approach an interview in a state of calm confidence rather than desperate need, you show up differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself differently. The very quality of your presence changes, and that changes the outcome. Faith, in Murphy's framework, is the activating force that takes imagination from daydream to directive. Without faith, you might imagine your goals clearly, but carry an undercurrent of disbelief that undermines everything. Have you ever caught yourself planning something wonderful while simultaneously thinking, yeah, but it probably won't work out? That is imagination without faith, and it is largely self-defeating. Murphy talks about affirmations, specific, present-tense positive statements that you repeat with feeling and conviction until they sink below the surface of your conscious mind and become lodged in the subconscious. He is very specific about how to use them. Not desperately, not while checking your watch, not as a ritual you resent, with the same calm certainty you'd use to say, the sun will rise tomorrow. There is a famous story about a scientist working in a laboratory in the 1920s who had hit a wall on a problem that had been blocking his research for 2 years. He had tried every logical approach, exhausted every avenue. His colleagues had begun to give up. But each night before sleep, this man would sit quietly and repeat with genuine inner conviction, "The solution is known to me. My subconscious mind has the answer. It will reveal itself to me clearly." He didn't know exactly how or when. He just held the faith that it was so. The answer came to him at 3 in the morning, fully formed, waking him from sleep. He jumped from his bed, wrote it down, and that discovery became the foundation for work that changed his entire field. Was it luck? Was it his subconscious, finally freed from the pressure of desperate effort, making the connections his conscious mind had been too stressed to see? Murphy would say it was both, and that the faith he maintained was what allowed the subconscious to do its work. The question for you today is this. In the area where you most want change, what is the quality of your faith? Are you hoping things will work out? Or do you carry something closer to a deep, settled conviction that they will? And if that conviction isn't there yet, what would it take to begin building it? We've covered imagination, mental attitude, and faith. Now it's time to get specific. Murphy devotes a significant portion of this book to what he calls the science of prayer, the actual practical method for directing your subconscious mind toward a desired outcome. This is where things get concrete and immediately useful. Chapter 4. Scientific Prayer. How to Speak to Your Subconscious Mind. I want you to picture someone who prays. Maybe it's a childhood image. Maybe it's a grandmother at a pew. Hands folded, eyes closed, asking for something from somewhere above. And then, I want you to set that image aside entirely, because what Murphy describes as prayer is something far more precise, far more personal, and, for our purposes, far more actionable. Scientific prayer, as Murphy defines it, is a directed conversation with your own subconscious mind. It's a method of planting a specific seed, a specific desire, a specific outcome, below the threshold of your conscious awareness, where the subconscious can go to work on it without the interference of doubt, anxiety, and overthinking. He is very specific about the conditions under which this works best, and the conditions are relaxation, clarity, and feeling. Relaxation first. The conscious mind, when it's alert and active, acts as a kind of gatekeeper for the subconscious. It's analytical, critical, skeptical. When you're tense and anxious, that gatekeeper is working overtime, and anything you try to implant in the subconscious gets rejected at the door. Murphy recommends doing your directed affirmations or visualizations in a state of deep physical relaxation. The moments just before sleep are ideal. The hypergogic state, that threshold between waking and sleeping, is when the subconscious relaxes its grip and the gatekeeper becomes most receptive. Then, clarity. You need to be specific about what you want. Not, I want to be successful. Successful at what? By when? In what way? The subconscious does not respond well to vague instructions. It needs a clear image, a clear emotional signal. I am leading a team of 12 people in a company I am proud to work for is a directive. I want to be more successful is noise. And then, feeling. This is the activation key. The subconscious responds to emotional charge. An affirmation repeated mechanically without feeling is like sending an email with no content. The message arrives empty. But when you combine a clear mental image with a genuine feeling, the feeling of already having what you desire, you create a signal the subconscious cannot ignore. Murphy shares the case of a man who had a persistent health problem, chronic pain in his back that had defied every medical treatment his doctors tried. After years of procedures and disappointments, the man came to Murphy, and Murphy guided him through a specific practice. Each night before sleep, he was to enter a state of complete physical relaxation and then, in that quiet space, repeat slowly and with genuine feeling, "My body is perfect. Every cell, every nerve, every muscle operates in perfect harmony. I am whole. I am healed. I am free." Not a frantic prayer, not a desperate bargain, a calm, settled declaration of the truth he wished to experience. 6 weeks later, the man reported a complete remission of symptoms. His doctors were baffled. Murphy was not. Now, I want to be careful here. Murphy is not saying to skip your doctor. He is not prescribing prayer as a substitute for medicine. What he is describing is the extraordinary power of the mind-body connection that we now have significant scientific evidence for. The placebo effect alone demonstrates that belief, genuine, felt belief, produces measurable physiological changes. What Murphy is suggesting is that you can harness that connection deliberately rather than accidentally. The practical technique Murphy gives us, distilled down to its core, is this. Once a day, ideally at night before sleep, find a quiet place and lie or sit comfortably. Let your body release its tension. Let your breathing slow. And then, gently, begin to hold in your mind the image of your desire as already fulfilled. Not reaching for it, not pleading for it, resting in it. And as you hold that image, allow yourself to feel, actually feel what it would feel like to already be living that reality. The gratitude, the relief, the quiet pride, the simple fact of it being done. Hold that for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Then let it go. Release it. Trust it. Don't check on it anxiously through the day. Plant the seed and let the subconscious grow it in the dark. Murphy makes a point that I think is often missed by people who try this for a week and give up. He says the subconscious works according to its own timing. You do not dictate the schedule, you dictate the directive. The harvest is not always immediate, but the law, and he uses that word deliberately, the law is always at work. If you plant consistently, if you do not uproot the seed with doubt and contradiction, the harvest will come. We've built quite a foundation here: imagination, attitude, faith, scientific prayer. Now we're going to turn to something that Murphy emphasizes repeatedly throughout this book, the idea that your beliefs, especially your beliefs about yourself, have a specific mechanism by which they shape your reality. This is Chapter 5, The Law of Belief, Why You Get What You Truly Expect. There's a pattern I've noticed, and once you see it, you start to see it everywhere. It goes like this. A person says they want something: more money, a healthier body, a better relationship. And then you watch what happens when an opportunity for that thing appears. The salary negotiation they could win, but they settle. The gym membership they buy but don't use. The relationship that starts to bloom, but they self-sabotage. Why? They said they wanted it. They might have prayed for it. But somewhere deeper, below all the wanting and praying and planning, they didn't actually believe they deserved it. This is the law of belief, and it might be the most unsettling thing in Murphy's book, because it means that what you get in life is not determined by what you hope for or wish for, or even work toward in a surface-level way. It is determined by what you genuinely, deeply, subconsciously believe you deserve and expect. Murphy gives an example that is almost painful in its accuracy. He describes a man who grew up in poverty. Every time money started to come in, something would happen: a sudden expense, a bad investment, a lost job. Over and over, the same pattern. This man was not unlucky. He was running a program installed in childhood. Money is hard to keep. Rich people are different from us. I am not meant to have too much. That program, buried in the subconscious, was filtering his decisions, his relationships, his opportunities, and producing, reliably, the outcome he unconsciously expected. Now, here's where Murphy's approach differs from just positive thinking, which can feel like putting a fresh coat of paint over a crumbling wall. Murphy is not asking you to fake it. He is not asking you to paste affirmations on your mirror and hope for the best. He is asking you to actually go in and change the belief, to work at the subconscious level, not just the conscious surface.
Murphy tells about a woman who had repeated failures in relationships. She was kind, intelligent, attractive. Every relationship she entered followed the same arc. Promising start, then she would become clingy and fearful. The man would pull away, and the relationship would collapse. When she examined her core belief, she found it. I am not truly lovable. People leave eventually. That belief was installed before she could remember having it, and it was destroying every relationship before it had a chance to become real. Murphy worked with her over several weeks, guiding her through a process of identifying the belief, tracing it to its origin, and systematically replacing it. Not through force, but through patient, consistent repetition of a new truth. I am deeply lovable. I attract loving, committed relationships. I am worthy of lasting love. Said daily with feeling in a relaxed state. Over time, the new belief began to take root. Her behavior in relationships shifted. Her attractiveness, which was never the problem, could finally be received without sabotage.
Murphy quotes a powerful line that I want to just let sit for a moment. Man is belief expressed. Not what he says he believes, not what he thinks he believes, what he actually deeply, subconsciously believes. That is what gets expressed in his life. So I want to ask you something uncomfortable. In the area of your life that isn't working, the thing you keep trying to fix and keep finding yourself back at square one, what is the belief you're running beneath the surface? Not what you wish you believed. What do you actually believe? In the quiet, honest part of yourself about what is possible for you there. That belief is the thermostat setting. And until you change the thermostat, all the effort in the world will eventually bring you back to the same temperature. The way to change it is exactly what Murphy has been teaching us. Relaxation, clarity, feeling, repetition. New seed, new harvest. But it requires a willingness to look honestly at the old seeds you've been watering without knowing it. One more thing Murphy says here that I find extraordinary. He argues that the subconscious is utterly neutral. It doesn't judge, it doesn't evaluate. It doesn't care whether the belief you hold is serving you or destroying you. It simply acts on whatever directive it receives. This means the same mechanism that has been working against you, patiently and precisely, will work just as patiently and precisely in your favor the moment you change the directive. Next up is the chapter that takes everything we've talked about and puts it into the context of one of the most important things you will ever do: choosing and pursuing your true purpose. Chapter 6. Your Ideal, the compass that directs your subconscious power. I want to tell you about a man named Frederick Banting. It's 1920. Banting is a doctor in Ontario, Canada, not a successful one. His practice is failing. He is nearly broke. By most external measures, his life is not going well. But Banting has something, an idea, a question he cannot stop asking. He believes, without any evidence, against the consensus of the entire medical establishment, that diabetes might be caused by something in the pancreas, and that something might be isolated and used as a treatment. He pursues this idea obsessively. He is denied funding. He is laughed at by colleagues. He works in a makeshift laboratory with almost no resources. And in 1921, Frederick Banting and his assistant Charles Bast discover insulin. The discovery that would go on to save hundreds of millions of lives. Murphy uses this kind of story, and he has dozens of them, to make a point about the relationship between a person's ideal and the power of their subconscious mind. An ideal, as Murphy defines it, is not a vague wish. It is a clear, specific, emotionally charged vision of what you are meant to bring into the world. It is the organizing principle of your life. And when you have one, when you commit to it fully, your subconscious begins to marshal every resource at your disposal toward its fulfillment. Murphy spends considerable time in this chapter on the question of purpose, what he calls your ideal, and the relationship between that ideal and your daily mental life. He makes a claim that sounds almost too simple. When you are clear about your ideal and you think about it consistently, you will be guided to it. The ideas, the people, the circumstances, the resources, they will appear. Not magically, not without effort, but with a kind of inevitability that people who have experienced it describe as almost eerie. He tells the story of an author who had been struggling to find his voice for years. Technically competent, but somehow hollow. No real following, no real impact. Then something shifted. He got clear, not on a topic, but on a mission. He knew what he was here to say. He knew who he was here to say it to. He knew the transformation he wanted to create in his readers. And from that clarity, from that committed ideal, his writing changed. Not the mechanics, the soul of it. Within 2 years, he had an audience of 500,000 people who felt, reading him, that he was speaking directly to them. Murphy says, "The greatest and richest galleries of art in the world are the galleries of the mind devoted to God's truths and beauty." What he means is this: the most powerful thing you will ever create is the clear, sustained, vivid ideal in your own mind. Everything external, the book, the business, the relationship, the achievement, is just the projection of that inner picture onto the screen of the world. So, how do you find your ideal, if you don't already have one? Murphy gives guidance here that I find quietly profound. He says, pay attention to what you cannot stop thinking about. Pay attention to what angers you when it's absent from the world. Pay attention to what you do so naturally, with such ease and pleasure, that you forget it is work. These are the signatures of your ideal, your purpose, trying to reveal itself through you. And then, once you have even a rough shape of it, do what Murphy has been teaching us throughout this book. Take it into your inner life. Hold it in imagination. Charge it with feeling. Believe in it not as a possibility, but as a certainty. And then act from that belief. Act in the direction of that ideal, even when the outer conditions haven't caught up yet. Especially then. Murphy puts it beautifully. Commit wholeheartedly to your ideal. Praise it. Give it your attention, your love, your devotion. And as you do, the fearful thoughts, the doubts, the "who am I to think this is possible" voices will lose their power. They will, as he puts it, make obeisance to your exalted state of mind. They will bow down and step aside. We are almost at the end of our journey through this book. But the final chapter and the closing section of this video might be the most important of all, because Murphy ends not with a technique, but with a challenge. And it's the challenge that everything in this book has been building toward. Chapter 7, Transforming Your Life, the moment you commit to believing in yourself. I want to tell you about a woman I'll call Margaret. She was 53 years old when she picked up this book, or a book very much like it. She had spent decades in a career that paid well but meant nothing to her. She had a stable marriage that had become more habit than love. She had children she was proud of who had grown and left. And she had a dream she had been carrying since she was 19 years old: to paint. Not as a hobby, as a life, as an identity, as who she actually was. But every time that dream surfaced, the old voices would come. You're too old to start over. What will people think? You have responsibilities. Real artists have talent from birth. You're not one of them. And she would press the dream back down. Until the morning she picked up this book. She told the story of reading Murphy's words about the coat of many colors, about imagination being the first faculty, about the subconscious mind having no age limit, no expiration date on what it could help you achieve. And something cracked open in her, not dramatically. It wasn't a lightning bolt. It was more like a door she had always known was there, finally opening. She started painting. Not secretly, not apologetically. She converted the spare bedroom and told her husband and told her adult children and signed up for classes and showed her work to a gallery owner who turned her down, then found a second gallery owner who didn't. Within 4 years, Margaret had shown her work in 3 cities. Her paintings had sold. More importantly, she woke up every morning feeling, for the first time in decades, like herself. Murphy's concluding chapter is both summary and dare. He pulls together everything: imagination, attitude, faith, scientific prayer, the law of belief, the committed ideal. And he says none of this is theoretical. This is not a philosophy to admire from a distance. It is a practice. It is something you do, daily, specifically, with patience and with faith. He ends with the story of Joseph fully realized. Remember, Joseph started as the dreamer who was sold into slavery. He was thrown in prison. He lost everything. And then, because he never stopped believing, never stopped holding his ideal in mind, never stopped trusting the process even when the external evidence was catastrophic, he rose to become second in command of all Egypt. His brothers who had betrayed him came to him in need, and he did not punish them. He helped them. Murphy reads this not as a miracle, but as a map. The coat of many colors, your imagination's capacity to clothe any desire in form. The pit, the inevitable low points of the journey. Egypt, the subconscious, the place where ideas must first become established below the surface before they can emerge into the world. The rise to power, the natural consequence of sustained belief, sustained imagination, sustained faith. And then Murphy says something that I think is the most important sentence in the entire book. He says that the prison you are in, whether it is a prison of fear, sickness, lack, limitation of any kind, can be escaped. Not by waiting for external circumstances to change, but by exercising the same faculty that Joseph exercised: imagination. You can imagine your freedom. You can picture it. You can feel it. You can believe in it. And you can continue to do so faithfully until the subconscious translates that inner freedom into outer reality. This is the promise at the heart of believe in yourself. Not that the world will become easy, not that you will never face obstacles, not that desire alone produces results without effort, but that when you align your conscious thought, your imagination, your feeling, and your belief behind a clear and worthy ideal, you have access to a power that is, as Murphy puts it, infinite. The power of your own subconscious mind, directed by your highest vision of who you are meant to be. You were born to win. You were born to overcome. The intelligence, wisdom, and capacity that Murphy speaks about, they are not reserved for the extraordinary few. They are in you right now, waiting for you to activate them with belief. The only question is, do you believe it? Let's pull back for a moment and look at this book from altitude. Because while each chapter of Believe in Yourself offers something distinct and valuable, the real power of Murphy's work lies in how all of these ideas interlock, how they form not a collection of tips, but a complete, coherent system for transforming your inner life and, through that, your outer life. It starts with imagination, the faculty that most of us use randomly, anxiously, or not at all. Murphy says, this is your primary tool. It is the faculty that the greatest achievers in human history have used, consciously and deliberately, to project their desired reality onto the screen of their minds before it ever appeared in the world. Imagination is where everything begins. But imagination without attitude is unstable. Your mental attitude, the habitual emotional stance you take toward yourself and the world, either amplifies or undermines everything you try to build in your imagination. A fearful, cynical, self-defeating attitude will erode the clearest vision. A confident, open, expectant attitude will amplify even a small and tentative dream. And then there is faith. Not as a passive feeling, but as an active, cultivated state of inner conviction. Faith is what transforms imagination from fantasy into directive. It is the difference between wishing and believing. And that difference, Murphy has shown us, is the difference between outcomes. Scientific prayer is the method. The practical daily practice that plants the seeds of your desire in the fertile soil of the subconscious. In the optimal conditions, relaxation, clarity, feeling, repetition, for those seeds to take root and grow. The law of belief is the reason this all works, and also the reason it sometimes fails. What you genuinely believe, not what you want to believe, not what you think you should believe, but what is actually lodged in the subconscious as truth, is what gets expressed in your life. Change the belief, change the expression. And your ideal, your clear, specific, emotionally committed purpose is the compass that directs all of this power. Without a clear ideal, your subconscious has no real target. With one, it becomes an engine of extraordinary, almost terrifying precision. Murphy is not naive. He does not promise that using these principles will mean a life free of setbacks. Joseph was sold into slavery. Joseph was imprisoned. The path from dream to fulfillment almost always passes through difficulty. What the principles guarantee is not an easy path, but a directed one. A path where you are not at the mercy of circumstances, but are working consistently and intelligently in alignment with the deepest power you possess. I want to say something personal here, something I think is worth naming directly. There is a kind of courage required by this book, not the dramatic battlefield kind, the quiet, daily kind. The courage to choose a different thought when the old one is louder. The courage to hold an image of success when the present evidence suggests otherwise. The courage to believe in yourself, specifically, stubbornly, persistently, when the world around you has not yet caught up to your vision. That is the courage Murphy is asking for, and he is asking for it because he knows what it produces. Let's get very specific, because all of this means nothing if it stays in your head as a nice set of ideas. Here are 5 things you can do, starting today, to begin putting the principles of this book to work in your actual life. First, identify your ideal. If you don't already have a clear, specific vision of what you are working toward in your career, your health, your relationships, your creative life, that is your first assignment. Not a vague desire, a clear, specific, emotionally resonant picture. Write it down, not as a goal statement, as a description of the reality you intend to inhabit. I am running a creative agency with 8 people who love what we do. We serve clients whose work I believe in. I earn a salary that allows me to live without financial anxiety. I wake up on Monday mornings feeling genuinely excited. Specific, present tense, emotionally real. Second, do your daily practice. 10 to 20 minutes ideally before sleep. Physical relaxation first. Then bring your ideal into your imagination. Not straining for it, but settling into it. See it. Feel it. Hear the sounds of that reality. Notice what you're wearing, where you are, who is with you, and hold it with the quality of faith, the calm certainty that it is done. This is your nightly deposit into the account of your subconscious mind. Third, audit your mental attitude. Not once, but daily. Pay attention this week to your habitual emotional reaction to your work, to yourself, to setbacks. When you catch yourself running a negative attitude, not to suppress it, but to name it. This is a habit. It is not the truth, and I choose a different response. The act of noticing breaks the automaticity of the habit. Over time, with practice, the new response becomes the new automatic. Fourth, find and address your limiting beliefs. In the area where you most want change, ask yourself honestly, what do I actually believe in my gut about what is possible for me here? Write it down without editing. Then, below that, write the belief you want to hold instead. Begin using your daily practice to plant the new belief. Patient repetition. Feeling. Faith. Fifth, trust the process and stay in action. Murphy is not prescribing passivity. He is not saying, sit and visualize and do nothing else. He is saying that inner work and outer action must go together. The inner work directs the subconscious. The outer action creates the channels through which the subconscious delivers results. You still make the calls. You still do the work. You still show up. But you do it from a fundamentally different internal state. Not from fear, not from doubt, from belief. These 5 things, done consistently, will change your life. Not immediately, not without effort, but inevitably. I want to speak for a moment, if I may, to the part of you that is still uncertain. The part that is sitting here, having heard all of this, and is quietly asking, but what if it doesn't work for me? What if I try and fail again? What if I am not one of the people this works for? I hear that voice. I know that voice. And I want to say something to it directly. Dr. Murphy was not writing for extraordinary people. He was writing for ordinary people who had stopped believing in themselves. He was writing for the salesman who had lost his confidence, the writer who had forgotten her purpose, the young man with failing grades and a mind full of doubt, the woman who could not keep a relationship, the man trapped in a prison of chronic pain. He was writing for people exactly where you are, dealing with challenges exactly as real as yours. And what he discovered,
after decades of working with people in exactly these circumstances, is that the principles he describes work not because some people are special and others aren't. They work because of how the human mind is constructed. The subconscious is not selective. It does not favor the wealthy or the educated or the naturally talented. It responds with perfect fidelity to the images and beliefs you consistently give it. Period. You have everything you need right now. Not everything you need to succeed immediately. That will come through time and effort and the unfolding that Murphy describes, but everything you need to begin. An imagination that works, a subconscious that is listening, a capacity for faith that you may not have exercised in a while, but which is still there, waiting. The coat of many colors is yours. The dream is yours. The power to bring it from the invisible world of imagination into the visible world of your daily life, that is yours too.
Murphy ends his book with this: "You were born to win, to conquer, and to overcome, not to struggle indefinitely, not to settle for a life that doesn't fit who you actually are. To win, to overcome. And the path to that, the doorway through which that life is entered, is belief. Specific, sustained, practiced, disciplined belief in yourself. Start tonight. 10 minutes. Your ideal held in imagination, felt in your body, trusted in your heart. That is how it begins. That is how it has always begun. One quiet, determined act of faith at a time. I believe you can do this. Murphy believed it. And somewhere beneath all the doubt and difficulty, I think you believe it too. You wouldn't have spent this time here if you didn't. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Believe in Yourself by Dr. Joseph Murphy is one of those books that rewards rereading. Every time I return to it, I find something I missed, something that lands differently because of where I am in my own journey. If this video resonated with you, I genuinely recommend picking up the original. There is something about reading Murphy's own words in his own cadence that the summary can never fully replace. If you got value from this breakdown, it would mean a lot if you hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who might need exactly what we talked about today. And if you want more deep dives like this into the books that have actually changed lives, then subscribing is the move. I have a lot more coming. There is a video I made not long ago on the power of your subconscious mind, Murphy's most famous work, and in many ways, the companion to this one. If Believe in Yourself gave you the what, that book gives you the deeper how. I'll leave it linked for you. Take care of yourselves, do the work, and believe. I mean, really believe that who you are becoming is worth it, because it is. I'll see you in the next one. There is something that Murphy returns to again and again throughout this book, and I want to spend a moment on it specifically because I think it changes the way you understand everything else we have discussed. The subconscious mind, as Murphy describes it, is not simply a storage room for memories and conditioning. It is an active, creative intelligence. And when you learn to partner with it rather than fight it, the results can be extraordinary. Think about the moments in your life when the best ideas have come to you. Not when you were grinding at your desk, frustrated and forcing it, but in the shower, on a long walk, in that half-asleep state early on a Saturday morning when nothing is urgent and nothing is pressing. The subconscious works best when the conscious mind steps back from its anxious analytical grip. Murphy describes the conscious mind as active and directive, the subconscious as receptive and creative, like a capable contractor who builds exactly to the specifications handed to them. He makes the point that the conscious mind cannot do what the subconscious does. There is something that Murphy returns to again and again throughout this book, and I want to spend a moment on it specifically because I think it changes the way you understand everything else we have discussed. The subconscious mind, as Murphy describes it, is not simply a storage room for memories and conditioning. It is an active, creative intelligence. And when you learn to partner with it rather than fight it, the results can be extraordinary. Think about the moments in your life when the best ideas have come to you. Not when you were grinding at your desk, frustrated and forcing it, but in the shower, on a long walk, in that half-asleep state early on a Saturday morning when nothing is urgent and nothing is pressing. The subconscious works best when the conscious mind steps back from its anxious, analytical grip. Murphy describes the conscious mind as active and directive, the subconscious as receptive and creative, like a capable contractor who builds exactly to the specifications handed to them. He makes the point that the conscious mind cannot do what the subconscious does. The conscious mind can hold only a handful of things at once. The subconscious processes millions of inputs simultaneously, cross-referencing everything you have ever known, felt, experienced, and learned, and doing so without effort, without fatigue, without the limitations that exhaust your conscious thinking. When you plant a clear directive in the subconscious and then release it with faith rather than anxious monitoring, you are handing a complex problem to a processor of incomprehensible speed and depth. Murphy gives the example of a composer, a musician who had hit a creative wall so complete it felt like the end of her ability. Months without a single measure she could stand. She had tried every technique she knew, structured practice sessions, collaborating with other musicians, forcing herself to sit at the piano for hours. Nothing. Then Murphy guided her away from all that forcing and towards something simpler. Each evening, she was to lie down, relax completely, and simply say with genuine feeling, "The music within me flows freely. I am a channel for creative expression. The music I am meant to write already exists, and it reveals itself easily."
She was skeptical. This felt passive, almost irresponsible. But 3 weeks later, she woke from a dream with a complete compositional theme fully formed in her mind. She went to the piano immediately and played it, and it was, by her own reckoning and the later assessment of those who heard it, the best work she had ever produced. The subconscious had been working on what the conscious mind had been blocking. Murphy also addresses the reverse, what he calls inverted prayer, the habit of dwelling persistently, emotionally, and repeatedly on what you fear. A business owner who cannot stop rehearsing the bankruptcy, the shame, the failure, who lies awake running these images with full feeling every night, is, in Murphy's framework, doing exactly what he should be doing to achieve his desired outcome. Except his desired outcome and his feared outcome are the same thing.
This is a sober point, and Murphy makes it without cruelty. The mechanism doesn't know fear from hope. It knows emotional charge and repetition. If your most consistent, most vivid, most emotionally loaded mental images are images of things going wrong, the subconscious will work toward those images with the same faithfulness it would bring to your best aspirations. Knowing this, you understand why becoming conscious of what you are imagining and deliberately directing it is not optional. It is the most important work you can do. Murphy is meticulous throughout this book about the specific language his subjects use when directing their subconscious. And he makes a point that seems almost too simple to take seriously until you actually pay close attention to your own internal monologue for a full day. The words you repeat habitually, the sentences that run through your mind when things go wrong, or when you are trying to fall asleep, or when you are sitting alone without distraction, those words are programming. They are directives being fed into the subconscious constantly, whether you intend them or not. Consider the difference between these two inner narratives. The first, I am always struggling with money. No matter what I do, I never seem to get ahead. People like me don't get rich. The second, I am building prosperity. Every day I move closer to financial freedom. I am resourceful, capable, and deserving of abundance. These are not just different attitudes, they are different programs being written into the subconscious. Different seeds being planted in the same soil, and the soil will grow whatever it receives.
Murphy is very specific about the language of effective affirmations. They are always in the present tense, not I will be, but I am. They are always positive. They state what you want, never what you don't want. I am healthy, not I am not sick. I am confident, not I am no longer afraid. The subconscious works primarily in images and feelings, not in logical propositions. When you say, I don't want to be poor, the image that forms is poverty. When you say, I am abundantly prosperous, the image is abundance. The negation doesn't register the way your logical mind intends it. Murphy also emphasizes sincerity over performance. Affirmations repeated mechanically, bored, in a state of active internal disbelief, have little force. He recommends a quality of genuine engagement, approaching the practice as though it genuinely matters, because it does. The person who sits down each evening and spends 15 focused, sincere, feeling-charged minutes directing their subconscious toward a clear desired outcome is doing something that compounds over time in ways that are difficult to explain until you have experienced them.
He describes a woman in financial desperation who had begun running a self-reinforcing loop. I am a failure. I can't do anything right. I am falling apart. Murphy asked her to interrupt that loop and replace it with directed truth. I am guided. I am supported. The right opportunity is finding me right now. She found a new job within 2 months at higher pay than the one she'd lost. The words alone didn't produce the job. The words changed her inner state, which changed how she showed up, which changed how people experienced her. The words were the first domino in a chain that ended in a different life. Murphy closes this theme with a reminder that is also, quietly, a warning. You are always talking to yourself. The conversation never stops. The only question is what you are saying and whether the program you are running in the privacy of your own mind is building the life you want or methodically dismantling it. I want to close the substantive part of our time together with something Murphy addresses throughout this book, but perhaps never quite states directly. Something that lives between the lines of all his case histories. Every single person he describes who successfully used these principles had to begin before they felt ready, had to take the first step before the destination was clearly visible, had to plant the seed before there was any evidence it would grow. The writer who visualized the finished manuscript did not wait until she felt like a real writer. The woman who affirmed employment did not wait until she felt confident about her prospects. The man who changed his beliefs about money did not wait until his bank account improved first. They changed first, inside, and the outside followed. This is not a small point, it is the entire point. Murphy quotes a principle he attributes to ancient wisdom: act as if. Not in a fake, performative way, not in a way that denies the reality of your present circumstances, but in the inner sense of beginning to think, feel, and move through the world as the version of yourself that already has what you desire, carrying the attitude of that person, making the decisions that person would make,
treating yourself with the respect that person commands.
This is not delusion. Delusion is clinging to a fantasy because you cannot face reality. What Murphy is describing is entirely different. It is choosing to build a new reality by first living it internally. This is exactly what every great builder has done, in business, in art, in science, in human relationships. They built the thing inside themselves first, held it with faith and imagination and daily practice, and then watched it materialize in the world around them. Not magically, through the cumulative effect of thinking differently, deciding differently, acting differently, attracting differently. The question Murphy leaves us with, and the question I want to leave you with, is simple and worth sitting with seriously. What would you attempt? What would you allow yourself to want and to work toward if you genuinely, truly, practiced, believed in yourself? Not if circumstances changed first. Not if someone gave you permission. Not if you finally felt ready enough. If you believed in the specific, practiced, daily, feeling-charged way that Murphy describes throughout this book, in your own capacity to bring your ideal into reality. Murphy has shown us, through decades of patient work with real people in real difficulty, that the answer to that question is the life you are meant to live. Not a perfect life, not a life without difficulty or grief or the particular pain that comes from caring about things that matter, but a life that is genuinely, unmistakably, recognizably yours, built from the inside out, grounded in belief before it was grounded in evidence, held with faith before it was validated by results. That life begins the moment you decide to believe it is possible, not when you have proof, not when the circumstances improve, the moment you decide. And tonight, in the quiet before sleep, you have an appointment with the most creative and powerful intelligence you will ever have access to, with the part of you that has been waiting, patiently and faithfully, for exactly the directive you are finally ready to give it. Show up for that appointment. Everything else will follow. One area where Murphy's principles get particularly interesting and where people often underestimate their application is in the realm of personal relationships. Most people approach relationship problems from the outside in. They try to change the other person. They look for different partners. They adjust their behavior in hopes that adjustment alone will fix what is broken. Murphy suggests something more fundamental and more personal. He tells the story of a man who had been married 3 times and divorced 3 times. Each time, the same essential problem emerged, a deepening sense that he was not truly valued, a pattern of jealousy and control, a feeling that love was always about to be withdrawn. He came to Murphy convinced that he was simply unlucky in love. Murphy helped him see what he could not see from the inside of the pattern. These were not facts about the women he had chosen. They were beliefs he held about himself, about his own worthiness, about what love actually felt like when it was real. Those beliefs were creating the very dynamics he most dreaded. Murphy's prescription was not to work on communication strategies or attachment styles, though those things have their value. It was to change the foundational belief from the inside out. Each night in the relaxed state, I am worthy of deep, committed, lasting love. I am easy to love. I attract a partner who cherishes me and whom I cherish in return. Love in my life is secure and growing. Day after day, week after week, with genuine feeling and with patience. The change in this man's next relationship was remarkable, not because a better person appeared, though perhaps she did, but because he brought himself differently to it. The undercurrent of expected betrayal that had quietly poisoned every previous relationship was no longer there. His behavior changed because his inner belief had changed. And relationships, Murphy reminds us, are profoundly sensitive to the inner beliefs of the people in them. Murphy extends this to something even broader. He describes the practice of holding those you love in your mind at their highest and best, not in their current struggle, not in their worst moments, but in the vivid, feeling-charged image of them healthy, purposeful, flourishing. He describes a mother who did this for a son who had lost his way. She did not speak to him about it. She did not lecture or plead. She simply spent time each day holding the clear, loving image of him as he was at his best, as she believed he was meant to be. Over time, without her saying a word, he began to change. Murphy does not fully explain the mechanism, whether it was the shift in how she unconsciously interacted with him or something less easily categorized. He simply notes that this kind of holding of an image of healing for another person appears, in his long experience, to create real effects. It is a form of love that operates at the level of belief rather than just feeling. And it may be one of the most powerful things you can do for the people you care about most. I want to address something directly, because I think it is the place where most people, even people who genuinely commit to Murphy's principles, eventually stumble. It is the question of timing. Murphy plants a directive. Murphy does the daily practice. Murphy holds the faith. And then, nothing. Not immediately, not this week, maybe not this month. And the doubt creeps back. Maybe it isn't working. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe this is not meant for me. Murphy anticipates this. He addresses it throughout the book, and in case after case, he is emphatic. The subconscious does not operate on your conscious schedule. It does not consult your deadline or your urgency or your impatience. It works according to the nature of what is being grown and the conditions in which it is growing. A tomato seed does not become a tomato in a week. A sapling does not become an oak in a season. And the outer life you are building from the inside out does not materialize on the schedule your conscious mind prefers. The right response to the gap between planting and harvest is not to try harder. It is not to add more affirmations or visualize longer or check the ground more frequently. The right response is the one Murphy describes as the most difficult thing he teaches: continued, patient, faithful practice without the compulsive need to see results. To plant and to wait, and to continue planting, trusting that the law is at work even when the evidence has not yet arrived. He gives the analogy of a farmer. A good farmer does not plant seeds and then dig them up every 3 days to check if they are growing. He plants, he tends the soil, he keeps the conditions right, and he trusts the process that has worked reliably for as long as humans have grown food. Murphy says, be the good farmer of your own subconscious. Plant your seeds. Tend the conditions, your daily practice, your mental attitude, your faith, and then trust the harvest to come in its season. He acknowledges that the waiting is the hardest part, especially when the outer circumstances are pressing, when the financial situation is urgent, when the health problem is serious, when the relationship is in real pain. In those moments, the temptation is to abandon the inner work and focus entirely on the external, to exhaust yourself in frantic activity that is driven by fear rather than grounded in faith. Murphy does not say external action is wrong. He says action driven entirely by fear without the inner grounding of practiced belief tends to produce outcomes that are themselves driven by fear. The combination Murphy advocates is this: daily inner work that keeps your subconscious directed toward your desired outcome, combined with outer action taken from a place of confidence rather than desperation. This is the difference between someone who networks from genuine enthusiasm about their work versus someone who networks from the anxious energy of someone who needs something desperately. The outer actions may look similar. The inner state is completely different. And people and life respond to the inner state. Murphy ends with a promise he has earned through decades of evidence. The law does not fail. The seed, properly planted and properly tended, always produces. The subconscious, given a clear and consistent and feeling-charged directive, always responds. The only real question is whether you will maintain your faith and your practice through the gap. Whether you will be the farmer who trusts the season or the one who digs up the seeds in despair and wonders why nothing grew. You now have everything you need to be the first farmer. The soil is ready. The season is right. The only thing left is to plant. There is a moment in the journey that Murphy describes again and again in different words with different people in different circumstances. And it is the moment I want you to understand most clearly before we close. It is the moment of true commitment, not the intellectual agreement that these ideas make sense, not the tentative first practice, the moment when something shifts inside you and you genuinely decide, this is the direction I am going. This is who I am becoming. This is the life I am building, and I am not turning back. Murphy says that moment, that genuine inner commitment, is itself a kind of prayer. It is a signal of such clarity and conviction that the subconscious receives it immediately and without ambiguity. And from that moment forward, everything begins to reorganize around it. Not visibly, not yet, but the invisible scaffolding begins going up. The subconscious mind begins filtering your entire experience differently. Opportunities that were always there become visible. People who were always around become relevant. Ideas that had been floating just out of reach suddenly land fully formed in your conscious mind. Murphy described a businessman who had been struggling for years with a failing enterprise. He had tried every external fix: new marketing, new staff, new products, new locations. Nothing worked. He came to Murphy exhausted and nearly defeated, and Murphy guided him not to a new business strategy, but to a new inner commitment. The man spent 3 evenings in deep, quiet, feeling-charged prayer, not asking, but declaring, "My business is a success. I bring genuine value to my clients. The right people find me. I am guided in every decision I make." He held each statement with the full weight of his conviction in a state of complete relaxation until it stopped feeling like a wish and began feeling like a memory of something that had already happened. Within 90 days, the business had turned around so completely that the man described it to Murphy as almost disorienting, as though the external world had simply rearranged itself to match the internal picture he had planted. Murphy did not find this surprising. He had seen it too many times. The mechanism, he argues, is not mysterious once you understand it. The committed inner picture changes behavior, subtly, constantly, in ways the person is often not even aware of. The businessman began speaking about his company with confidence instead of apology. He made different decisions in client meetings. He took different risks. He paid attention to different signals. The inner commitment expressed itself in 1,000 small outer actions that cumulatively changed the trajectory of everything. This is the key that Murphy wants us to carry away from this book. The inner and the outer are not separate. They are two aspects of one continuous reality. change the inner, and the outer must eventually follow. Not because of mystical intervention, but because of the simple, powerful, completely dependable principle that a changed person living in a changed inner state will inevitably create changed outer results. The person who walks into a room genuinely believing they have something valuable to offer is not the same person as the one who walks in hoping no one notices how uncertain they are. They may be wearing the same clothes, they may say nearly the same words, but the quality of their presence is entirely different, and life responds to presence. People respond to presence. Opportunity responds to presence. That presence is not manufactured. It is grown through daily practice, through sustained faith, through the patient and deliberate cultivation of belief that Murphy has spent this entire book teaching us how to do. We have covered a great deal of ground together today. From the ancient story of Joseph and the coat of many colors, through the mechanics of imagination and how to use it deliberately, through the hidden thermostat of mental attitude and how to reset it, through the activating force of faith and how to build it systematically, through the practical method of scientific prayer and the specific conditions that make it work, through the law of belief and the uncomfortable truth that what we expect is what we receive, through the power of a committed ideal and what it means to let your subconscious organize around a clear and worthy purpose, and through the extraordinary creative intelligence that is already within you, already listening, already ready to work on your behalf. Murphy's message at its deepest level is not complicated. It is this: you are more powerful than you have been living as though you are. The forces that appear to be limiting you are largely internal. The beliefs you hold about yourself, about what you deserve, about what is possible, about what kind of person you are not facts. They are habits of mind. And like all habits, they can be changed with patience, with method, with the daily, sincere, feeling-charged practice of directing your subconscious toward the life you actually want to live. You do not need to be exceptional to use these principles. You do not need to have had an easy past or a clear advantage or a particular kind of personality. You need exactly what you already have: a mind, an imagination, and the capacity to feel. That is all the raw material required. Everything else is practice. Murphy closes Believe in Yourself with a statement of profound confidence, not in himself, not in his methods as something exotic or rare, but in the fundamental nature of what human beings are capable of when they stop undermining themselves with habitual doubt and begin working deliberately and faithfully with the power that has always been available to them. He believed it. Decades of working with real people in real difficulty had given him that belief. The student who turned around his grades, the woman who found her confidence, the businessman who rebuilt his company, the composer who found her music again, the man who learned to receive love. Every single one of them accessed the same power you have access to right now. The only difference between them and someone who reads this book and puts it down unchanged is a decision. The decision to take this seriously, to do the practice, to give the subconscious clear, consistent, feeling-charged direction toward a life worth believing in, to maintain that faith through the gap between planting and harvest, to trust the law that Murphy spent his life documenting because it had proven again and again to be real. You can make that decision today. You can begin tonight. And if you do, if you truly commit to what Murphy is describing, not as a weekend experiment, but as a new way of living your inner life, then something will shift. Quietly, invisibly at first, but the shift will come. And eventually, in a timeline you cannot predict but can fully trust, The outer life will catch up to the inner one you have been building. That is the promise. That is the whole of it. Believe in yourself, not as a nice idea, as a practice, as a daily act of faith in the extraordinary power that was given to you, that lives in you, and that has been waiting patiently, faithfully, without judgment, for you to finally, fully use it.